All right, let's get back to the Photoshop crash course. Refresher reminder. Let's open from Bridge Garden Gnome. What kind of issues we have going on here? Little dark, little color cast to it, definitely. Yep. So, in our adjustments layer, to be non-destructive, which one would we maybe try? What would you guys think? Let's try a couple. Let's try hue saturation first. And let's look at the saturation. Is that the issue? Not really, right? We're either making it black and white or we're super saturating it. So that's not the issue. Hue, we're going to kind of rotate him through a variety of looks. It's not really the issue. Colorize, not so good. Or lightness, I mean, not colorize. Sorry, my bad. So if all of these were back to their zeros, notice that we were attacking the master all at once. So we could go color by color, and we could take the reds and we could saturate or desaturate the yellows, greens, blue, magentas. Or we could use this targeted adjustment tool, the hand, and we could just come in and say, this is something I want brighter or darker. This is something I want to tweak. I don't like the color cast here. This is something I want to tweak. This is something I want to tweak. But you also have to watch. Sometimes just because I'm in the area of this background that's dark, I'm actually targeting a lot more areas, and that's not what I want. So we could slightly improve it using hue saturation, but it's probably not the best idea. So I'm just going to take that hue saturation layer and either right-click and delete it or drag it down to the garbage can down below. Another option that we could try in our adjustments is color balance. And here we get in our midtones, that's what's targeted first by default. We have our cyans, reds, magenta to green, yellow to blue. So there's a little bit of either a yellow or a blue tint to this. So if we play with that slider, we can start to make a few improvements. And then you can kind of go through the others and keep tweaking them visually to try to get some sort of an improvement. So this is a visual option and probably not entirely what we wanted. If the midtones didn't get the best option, you could try shadows, and you could play with how do the cyans or reds in the shadows behave. How about the magentas and greens? A little bit warmer, a little bit more yellow maybe. And sometimes it's a combination. Color balance helped, but maybe fixing the levels would help too. So we add the levels, and I can see that if I pull over the bright point, that's definitely helping too. So it could be a combination, a couple of stacks of different adjustment layers that are going to make it good. All right, let's close the Garden Gnome without saving and open the hot air balloon, or hot air. And in hot air, I want you to do a hue saturation adjustment. And I want you to play with the hue slider, but watch how the hot air balloon reacts when you do that. You guys seeing that as I'm pulling through here? Yeah. It's changing what one hue used to be and what it looks like now. We could go into this drop down of the master and say I only want to target the yellows, and I want to change the hue of the yellows, and I could play with the slider, and now only the yellows are being affected. There's a little bit of an effect on the lime green above it and the orange below it because they have a little bit of yellow in them, but by and large it's just that yellow band that's changing. You want to change the reds. and come in and change your balloon that way also. Okay. Remember that? Or just a refresher? Okay. Let's close hot air balloon. And let's go into Bridge and find the picture. Okay, it's a raw file. It's 100.410_920 raw. So when you click on that, it's going to launch Adobe Camera Raw first of all. In Camera Raw, notice that your white balance can be changed because this was shot in Camera Raw. So if you got it wrong, if as shot looks like this, what if we try cloudy? Does that look better? Warmed it up a lot, right? We can maybe tweak the temperature, make it a little bit more yellow. We can change the exposure, make it a little bit brighter. Down in the shadows here in your foreground, open up your shadows. Take the shadow slider and pull it to the right to get some more detail down in the shadows. Play with these sliders until you get an improved version where you have more detail in your shadow area and more detail or a good color up here.
Is there a way to turn on and off what you did in RAW? Like there's at the adjustment layer?
On and off.
So you can see like the
Oh,
original
before and
photo.
after? Yes.
Is there like a quick button for it?
There's a
There's a
button next to image 1.
Oh, down here.
It's
Oh yeah, cycle between reform.
yeah.
down at the bottom left. Is that where you're seeing it?
I don't know
That, I like that. That's cool. Oh, what are you doing? Look at that.
Oh, you got a split screen even.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you guys making improvements? You can follow along?
Oh.
That's what we're doing in class today. You put down your phone, please, and follow along.
How'd you do that?
You got the left, right, left. Awesome.
How'd you do that?
Play with this one too.
This
Logan.
one's You put in that
Yeah.
cycle, yeah, you can cycle between different.
Okay, you're in Photoshop already. You're not in Camera Raw anymore. So you don't have all those options that I did. So go back to Bridge.
It's one image, but it's what?
Well, you did road. I want you to pick this one. The 100. They'll pick that. Okay, now this is Camera Raw. This is where you can change the white balance.
Yeah.
Change it to cloudy. And then I would.
I went to,
It was a shot. And I saw it.
you know, that little, was it thing?
I didn't have the white balance
I
right.
saw on that shop.
So that's what I recorded. Because I shot in Camera Raw, all the data's there and I can change my white balance. So you can switch to any one of the white
that even a
balances.
raw?
It's better. Cloudy warms it up.
Mine wasn't in there. I just took the command out. Oh, it was? It wasn't there? It was a different one. It's the first file. I just, it was already.
Yeah, the road to whatever is the JPEG. So yeah, it's kind of fun to do. And if you get too far carried away, in the Camera Raw on the right hand side.
So that means the first one.
I think you open. Well, let me see. I will let you
Soon as it comes out,
Just
and I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah, you open the JPEG version of it. So if you screw it up and you want to go back to the defaults, in that right-hand column, up where it says Basic, to the right of it is the hamburger menu, the 4 lines. Click on that, and one of those is going to say something like, what is it? Reset. Yeah. Yep. If you want to go back because you've done too many screw-ups, Camera Raw defaults, that's how it was recorded and came in originally.
So can you take a regular JPEG and then put it in?
Remember, yeah, that's what I said earlier. You can force a JPEG to open in Camera Raw by doing a Command R in Bridge. Because a JPEG won't normally open in Camera Raw, but you can. You won't have all of those options in white balance, but you'll have almost everything else. I promise you by the end of this class, you guys will love Camera Raw. I'm going to show you some stuff in it next week that's just, boom, it's crazy. Photoshop is really only needed when you start compositing. If you're just working on a photo and fixing it, Camera Raw is awesome. Okay. What were we going to do with that one? Is that all I was going to do with that? Hue saturation. Oh, okay, so get this where you like it, and then click OK or open it so it comes into Photoshop. And then I want to show you, or remind you, perhaps, is all it is. Open the shadows, open the exposure. Okay, good enough. Once we tell it in Camera Raw to open the image, now it comes into Photoshop and we can work with it here. So now we can do any of the things that we know in Photoshop. One thing I want to share with you is we have to make this background layer a regular layer. So click on the lock button so that it unlocks. And then under, that's not where it is. That's not what I want to do. Hold on. Under the adjustment layers, we have photo filters. And these are up here at the top. We have all these different filters. So these are the equivalent. I've shown you guys my neutral density filter and my polarizing filter that screw on the front of the lens. There are also colored filters that are called warming or cooling filters that are like colors, kind of like colored sunglasses. You guys know when you wear colored sunglasses and you're like down by the lake and you're like, oh my God, it's glorious. And then you take off your sunglasses and you're like, well, not so much. That's the same thing. So if you wanted to warm this up with a warming filter, you could try this one. If you wanted to try another warming filter, so you can just rotate through these. Cooling filter adds this color blue. You can always tweak the color and the density of the filter, but there's lots of ones in here. And sometimes like a yellow, look how much more that warmed up my image and made it look more kind of realistic. Like the grass was crazy green, the leaves were changing, it was gorgeous. Or I'm looking at Jordan's, that looks more like fall when everything's like close to the last leg, right? Things are not rich and green anymore. So with these different filters, you can also tweak and improve your images. And again, you can change the density, how much of that filter is being used. And then down in your layer stack, because it's a layer, you also have opacity options with it as well, down here. Warming up images using these warming filters or a yellow filter for a lot of landscapes can really improve them too. It's something worth looking into and seeing if it makes the picture pop. Okay, let's close this raw photo. And it's going to ask us, do we want to save it before closing? I'm going to say not because I'm going to keep using this. But if you were to save it, it would just show up in Bridge with that little icon denoting that you've tweaked it in Camera Raw and played with it a little bit. All right, let's open the file called Girl with Acne. Did we play on that picture before? Does that sound familiar to you guys? Or something similar?
I remember how to do this.
I remember doing this.
Did we use the same file?
No.
Oh,
Something different.
okay.
Oh, yeah, it was a different shit.
Okay, so this is Girl with Acne. You guys remember what tools help us in?
Brush,
Phone and
Yep.
stamp tool.
Yep. The cloning tool with the stamp, the healing brushes, the patch tool, all of those are our friends now, so let's go and look at those. In this clone stamp tool, this is the one where it literally picks up whatever pixels you sample first and places them down with a hard edge. But let's remember, up a little higher where the Band-Aid is, these are some of the better tools right now. The spot healing brush, the healing brush, and maybe the patch tool. Spot healing, let's look at that one first. So it's the Band-Aid with the spot by it. Zoom in and have your cursor be just a little bit bigger than the blemish itself so that it's sampling some good pixels around it. So what it's doing is it's looking at the perimeter and assuming that this is good and the thing in the middle is the problem. And with one click in this mode, whoops, it should take it out and fix it. And it also does the blending mode to blend with the skin around it. It's not a hard-edged clone stamp. So this one works great when the area around the perimeter of your circle or your clone stamp is all good. But as you get close to her eye, if I were to do something here, say the zit is right here, I would be also sampling some of this dark, and it would try smudging in dark. It would try blending dark there. It wouldn't work good on an issue right there. So you always have to pay attention. If this tool is not the tool of choice, the next best one, in my opinion, for stuff like this is the next one, the Healing Brush tool. Seems exactly the same, but the difference here is if you just click, it's not going to allow it to happen. It's going to say you need to option click first to sample your pixels and define a source point. So in this case, close to her eye, I could sample, option click with the bullseye. I could sample this skin, and then I could paint that. And notice it's blurring and with what's there. It's not making a hard edge. The clone stamp itself will exactly sample the pixels underneath and exactly put them down without any blurring. So that's when you switch to that tool. Yep.
So the healing brush, spot healing brush too?
Yep.
You can just go to the spot and click it and it'll change it?
Yep. The size of your brush or that circle should be a little bit larger than the blemish itself. And then the patch tool, since Zach up here has been doing mean things to this poor girl. Remember, the patch tool is where we circle something and then we drag to an area of good skin that we want to be placed over it, and that will patch it and blend the lighting. So what you want to take out is what you circle first, and then where you move it to is what it gets patched with. And it does its best to blend the lighting. Clone, 2 tools down. You have to sample the pixels underneath, so you have to option click, and that's going to paint them exactly as is with hard edges. So as you go left to right, your anchor point for your clone stamp tool, I can see the plus sign over her lips moving left to right, and it's painting a new set of lips up on her forehead as I do that. So those are the different tools that we would use on portraits. Ugh, that's gross. They're all gross, I'm sorry. Those are the tools that we would use on portraits to improve those. Skin tone, and you know, you got to think about your subject. If they have a lot of acne and you have them perfect skin somehow, you know, that might make them feel almost worse about their acne. But if they are just have a couple of zits, I think they would appreciate you de-zitting them, right? Know your client, know your goal. De-zitting, that's a technical term that I just created. All right, let's close this poor girl. Hopefully you have a refresher on what we're doing here. All right, let's go back to bridge and get this one, Red Eye Alex. This is my daughter who's in college now. How scary is that?
She's pretty young to be in college.
She's very young. She's brilliant. She's got gaps in her teeth. All right, we have a couple of issues here, but Red Eye is the one we're going to talk about first. Red Eye is nested under the clone stamp, or not clone stamp, the spot healing brush tools, and it's the bottom tool. And that works as easily, I'm going to zoom in, as either clicking on the issue or clicking and dragging a marquee over the issue. That's going to take all the red out. But remember, that's what it's doing. So if I do that over her lips, I gave her a black lip. It's just taking the red pixels and turning them into grayscale so that there's some definition in her eye. If you were to try to fix this by painting pure black in there, it would look unnatural. It's not all pure black, and you would wipe out the catch light, the little white reflective thing, and that's what makes things look realistic, is the catch light. So fix the eyes, and then let's close this file
Let's fix it. When you lighten the teeth.
and go to the next one. Called teeth. No, that one's not going to be any better. Hold on a sec.
You just like to.
Let's do the one A headshot and open that file and zoom in so that you can see the teeth. They don't look bad by any means, but could we improve them? Could we brighten the teeth? So anybody remember the process? What's your first step?
You gotta select it.
Select them, yes. So the quick select tool is probably the easiest one. And it's always going to be selecting as you move your cursor around, so it's always adding to the selection. And if you get too much, you have to hold down the Option and push down on the, push it back down into the boundaries. So quick select. So do your best to use the quick selection tool and get a decent lassoing around his teeth, but not lips or gums. And because of that, you might need to use, like I said, the minus or the hold Option so that the minus comes up and you can tweak that. It doesn't have to be perfect for this practice round, but that's the first step that you're going to do is just select the teeth. From here, we're going to do select, modify, expand, and we're going to expand this by 1 or 2 pixels just so it grows a little bit up into the gum line. And then with our marching ants going, we're going to go down and we're going to make a mask. So we're going to click on, whoops, that's not what we're going to do. We're going to do the hue saturation layer, sorry. We're going to do, with the teeth, marching ants on the teeth, we're going to go and do a hue saturation layer. That, because we have the teeth selected, automatically made the mask for us. Do you see over here on the right how there is a black mask? The only parts that are showing through are his teeth that we had selected. So whatever we do on this hue saturation layer is only going to affect his teeth because we had those lassoed. So the first step is what's wrong usually is yellow, usually. So we go to the yellow channel and we pull down the saturation of yellow a little bit. And you can see you can go far right to Cheeto teeth, or you can go far left, and they don't look bad, but often they almost look like wooden teeth if you take out too much. So, yeah, look, Cheeto, right there. I made Cheeto teeth by going too far.
You got an orange grill.
Or sometimes this looks like wooden teeth. So you take a little bit of the yellow out, then you go back to the master, and you bump up the brightness a little. And we don't want to give him chiclet teeth. Here's chiclet teeth.
Oh,
That's too much. We just want to brighten them up a little bit. And because this is a layer, we could always tweak the opacity down here too. If it's too bright and we want to back it off a little bit, we can do that. If we noticed that our selection went up into his gums and we were effectively bleaching his gums, we would just have to click on the masking layer and make our mask better, so it's only targeting his teeth. So again, did this make a big difference? It helped, certainly. So looking at some of your portraits, would they appreciate a little tooth whitening? They might. All right, let's close this, don't save, and open from Bridge the image called, I'm going to make this bigger, Red Eye Example. And I've already fixed the red eyes myself, I guess. Oh, yours are still red. Okay, so fix the red eyes on the child using the red eye tool nested under the healing brushes. And then try to fix it on the cat. And tell me if you're having any luck. Nope.
I did. Oh, I did on one eye.
Typically, animals you can't fix the same way. It's called green eye, it's not red eye, and this tool doesn't work. So if you wanted to fix that, your choice would be, you would zoom in on it a lot, and you would create a selection the size and shape of the eye, and you would fill it with black. But then it's not going to look realistic. Then what you need to do is go and see, he's got a little catch light in his eye that's just that big of a size, white dot. So you would make a white dot of the same size in about the same location in the pet's eyes, because the same light is hitting the pet's eyes as his. If you made the catch lights in another spot, or if they weren't symmetrical, if one was here and one was here, the cat would look, goofy. So if you're going to improve any of your animal pictures, if they have red eye or green eye or yellow eye like this, you need to not only fill the shape with black, you need to make a catch light that seems realistic. If there's not a human in it to compare to, that's fine. Just go in and make a white catch light that seems realistic. Okay? All right, don't save. The last thing that we're going to do is you guys are going to open Waves at Pier, and you are going to do everything that you've learned to make this the best picture possible. Levels, curves, color adjustment, cropping, using the grid of 3s to make it a better composition. Anything and everything you can to make this an awesome 5x7 high-res photo. So I'm going to just wander around at some point and see what you've done. Look at the levels. Look at maybe bumping some of the curves, horizon line. Anything and everything you can think of to do this photo, kind of bring it all together and fix this one. So I'm going to pop over into Blackboard, that other thing that we have. And your homework is going to be to edit things that you've already taken and submitted for this class on paper and all said, oh, it's terrible, it looks so much better here. So, of the portraits that you took, and I graded a while ago, the original portraits, you're going to pick one of them and you're going to edit it and make it awesome. And specifically, you're going to resize it because I do not want ginormous pictures. I will dock you if you don't resize it. So it has to be somewhere between 10 to 15 inches. I don't care if you do it a 10 inch or a 15. And then either wide or tall, whatever way it is, that's your maximum dimension. So if you pick 10 and your computer, when you're resizing, says the other dimension is 7, perfect. But one of them has to be 10 to 15. And 72 DPI, and more specifically, allow Photoshop to resample and throw out those pixels. I've had people give me stuff that's 72 DPI. They think they did it right, but it's like 45 inches by 35 inches. Photoshop did the 72, but it made it ginormous. So under cropping with height resolution, you're going to have to know your proportions if you want to go that route. You could say 10 by whatever, and 72 dots per inch. It's probably easier to go under image size, change it to 72, let Photoshop throw away all the pixels it needs to, and then change the bigger of your two dimensions to be 10 inches. Let the other one be whatever it is. Everybody clear on that? That's really important. Okay, so pick one of your portraits, you're going to edit it, resize it, and then either in the comments section in Blackboard or on a Word document that you upload, you're going to explain what editing you did and why. I don't want details, I want to know in general, like I fixed the horizon line, I used the clone stamp to take out this, I used the blending or the healing brush to take out acne, I fixed the levels to brighten up the photo, I added a yellow warming filter because it was just too cool and I wanted to warm it up. That's what you're going to tell me, just that one thing now. Does that make sense? I already know all the other information about it because you've already provided that. So you're going to do that for one of your portraits, one of your environmental portraits that you just turned in today, and one of your landscapes from 2 or 3 weeks ago. So these are all photos that you have already and should have on your drive here in class or accessible. You're going to fix 3 of them and upload them to the Dropboxes. Okay, then we're going to learn about 2 other techniques, and additional part of your homework is going to be taking photos that we can use with that next week. So it's going to be 3 edits and then taking photos again is your homework. Pardon? Nope, I'll explain. Very specific, not random at all. All right, first thing we're going to look at is panoramic photography. So, how can we create a panoramic shot? Have you guys seen those where it's like the whole width of some big building or Lambeau Field or something and the poster's like 5 feet wide and 2 feet tall? That's a panorama, right? So how we take those is first we're going to learn what we have to do in camera to get it right, and then we're going to use Photoshop's Photo Merge to do all of the stitching together, which is so cool. Old school, we'd take these photos, we'd make a blank canvas size of like 40 inches wide, and we'd bring in picture 1, picture 2, picture 3, picture 4, and then we'd start figuring out how to make them blend together. It was hard, it sucked, and now Photoshop makes it super easy and really cool. So the trick is getting it right in camera. You're going to want to use a tripod if you can, because that way, as you're going around taking the pictures like this, you're not going up or down or anything else. It's on a tripod, that level point is the same. And the goal is that you're going to overlap each shot by about 20-25%. So if I'm taking a pano of this class, and this is my first frame, what I can see, so Candace is still here, I'm going to make sure that when I take my next shot, she's in that next one too, completely overlapped, because then Photoshop will see her in 2 frames and it will line them up. So this is my next one. I've got Colin's head. I'm going to make darn sure Colin's head is in the next one so that Photoshop can overlap them. Jacob's in this shot. When I go over, I'm going to make darn sure Jacob's in this shot so it overlaps again. You have to overlap enough that Photoshop can understand how to keep stitching these together. That's huge. Okay. So in camera, some tips. Switch your white balance to anything that makes sense besides auto. Cloudy is a safe one. The thing is, picture yourself at a beach. You're in Bermuda or something, and you start over here, and the sun's over here, the sunset. As you start over here, the quality of the sky is going to be darker, and as you keep panning towards the sun, it's going to get brighter and brighter, right? If you have it on auto white balance, it can change its white balance as you go taking these pictures, and that can be problematic. So if you set it to one thing that's the same, it's going to help in your shots. Push your shutter down halfway to set the auto exposure, and then take note of what the camera settings are. So if you meter it and it says we need to be at f11 1/500th is your shutter speed, if that's what it meters. If you can, switch into manual mode and type in those 2 numbers and take all of the pictures at that same exposure, rather than letting the camera change. At a bare minimum, if you're in aperture priority mode, that at least will keep your depth of field the same in all of them. The aperture will stay the same, and if needed, your shutter will change a little bit to make each shot work. If you're in pure auto mode, you could go from having things in focus in different planes and it's not going to look right. So if you have these options, that's a great way to go. Otherwise, like I said, aperture priority for sure, to make sure your depth of field, how much is in focus, stays constant. So focus on the first segment of your panorama. Turn off your autofocus if you can, so that your camera doesn't have to go through that refocusing each time. If you don't have it, don't worry about it. Here's an awesome tip, especially for you guys who are going out and going to take these shots over the next week, and then we'll play with them next week. If you go to Lake Michigan and go, and you go, I'm going to try that again. When you get them back and you look in bridge, you're going to have a hard time figuring out what 3 or 5 go together. They're going to be very confusing. So this tip is, the first one that you take is a dummy shot. You hold up finger 1 and you take that shot to remind yourself this is the starting point. Then you take your hand out of the picture and you truly take 5 shots, and then when you're done, you put your hand up again and you take a picture of that. Now when you look at it on bridge, all of the pictures in between the one with the finger 1 and the closed hand, those are the ones that go in a series together. This will help you, I promise, especially if it's a picture of like Lake Michigan where there's hard to tell where one series ends and another begins. Remember to make sure about 1/4 of your shot is visible in the next one. And then shoot them all pretty quickly, especially if the lighting is changing. You don't want to take the first shot and then talk to your friend for 10 minutes and then take the second one, and third one, fourth one, kind of, keep going. If your camera has a panoramic option, which some do, especially the point and shoots where you literally hold it down and pan, kind of like your iPhone or Samsung, whatever, Don't do that. I want you to go old school or correct and try this. Don't use that feature. Take your shots, keep overlapping them. All right, here's an example of old versus new. So 3 different shots, made a canvas that was wide enough to hold them all, brought in image 1, image 2, image 3, lined them up, made everything work. Look at what you have issues with the sky. You see how it changes from right to left? That would take a whole lot of blending and painting and fixing to get that to look decent. That took a lot of work. Panoramas were hard. Here's new version that Photoshop kicks out. Look at the difference in the sky from left to right, and this will kick it out in a few seconds. All perfect. Very cool. All right, I'm going to show you a real-life example of me breaking all the rules, but I want to show you how cool this feature works. I think one of the tips that I failed to mention was to shoot vertically instead of wide. The reason being is that you get a little bit of distortion on the ends of your frame, and if you're shooting vertically, there's less distortion. So vertical shots stacked up are going to give you less distortion. Clearly, I didn't shoot vertically. I shot the other way. Did not have a tripod. Was not thinking about much of anything because it was so cold. Just wanted to take the shots, but it was really pretty. So first shot was this one, and this tree and this tree are repeated here and here. You can see them again, right? This white tree right here was repeated here, so those could totally overlay, but look at the difference in the brightness of the white of this tree from this frame to this frame. Same tree, very different. And look at all these power lines. Like, this is going to be a hot mess. I had no expectations for this to work in Photo Merge, and that's what it gave me. Yeah, I was shocked. Those are the 3, and you can see again the overlap, and it spit out this. Sky looks great, stupid power lines are all there. It's really cool. So hopefully in the next week you find something that's pretty and fun that you want to do a panoramic shot of, and we can stitch together at least 3 shots. You can do more if you want to. There's the final. And then faking panoramas is another option. This is full frame out of the camera, but by cropping it to this, it's a much more powerful picture. Much better. All this riffraff down here isn't important. And that's just a matter of taking crop and running through here. Any questions? Okay. It's not raining.